Hello, and welcome to another episode of Talking Tropes. I'm Hannah,
And I'm David.
and today we are going to talk about the migratory patterns of birds in nature documentaries and how, if you look closely enough, it actually is a
Twist! We're not
pattern.
talking about any of that boring shit. We're talking about M. Night Shyamalan and his famous twists.
Oh,
Twisty
snap.
turns. That's
We
right, we're going to
are.
twist again like we did last summer. Because that was also
Yes,
the last time that we talked about M. Night Shyamalan, was this past
yes.
summer.
We watched his probably worst movie, The Last Airbender. Having watched quite a bit of his of his filmography at this point, I'm pretty confident in saying The Last Airbender is definitely probably dead last, you know.
It's still his worst movie, but I mean, there's plenty of competition. There's plenty of fun movies that also just don't work at all.
But here's the thing: the Avatar is not fun, and there are other movies that are bad but are at least fun, like fun to
That's true.
watch.
That's true. But
Um,
also there are some dull ones.
so David,
But
for
we'll
those
get
who
into
don't
it.
know, what is the Shyamalan twist?
Well, the Shyamalan twist is sort of this interesting thing in the discourse because it's not something he introduced or claimed ownership of. It was something that
Mm-hmm.
people attributed to him, critics attributed to him after his first two big successful movies, Sixth Sense and Unbreakable. Both at the end had a plot twist that sort of sits at the end of the movie and then nothing comes after it. There's no
Mm-hmm.
follow up to it. The twist is the ending, right?
Right. It recontextualizes the movie, so it, sort of spurs people to watch it again.
Right, or at least that's what the interpretation of it is.
Yes.
That's what
Yeah.
it's supposed to do. Whether it
Right.
does that or not, not really the point. So then, for every movie following that, there was this need to force the twist into it,
Mm-hmm.
to centralize all of the discourse around the twist.
Mm-hmm.
Where sometimes I think that the twist doesn't actually even exist. It's really just
Yeah.
an illusion, an illusory twist.
Yeah.
Um,
Or it's a
so
twist that is revealed like too early and then is just kind of part of the movie.
Right, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a twist in the first act of your movie or in the second act. I mean, that's part of
Right.
basic screenwriting, right? I mean, any
No,
class that you've taken has will say you want to put twists and turns in your movie. You don't. We want to keep
but
people guessing. You don't want
I
to give
know,
away the plot in the trailer.
no, I 100% agree with you. However, I think that in some of these movies, the the twist that he's going, like, the twist he's going for by the end of act 1, but he's like, but you don't actually know what the twist is, and it's like,
Well, he does
no,
a lot
we
of
got it, bro.
fake outs, and he does a lot of red herrings, and he does a lot of what do you call them, double red herrings, when he just
Yeah.
sort of introduces the idea of what the entire movie is about as a throwaway line, and then the character rejects it, and then we
Mm-hmm.
move on, and then we return to it like, wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
there was something to that a second ago,
Yeah.
what somebody just said. Huh.
Huh. Who knew?
Really makes you think.
Yeah. So should we start with the big original, the Sixth Sense?
Yeah, let's talk about the Sixth Sense. This was the twist that started it all. It's spoilers from here on out. These are all going to be all of the twists of
Yes.
every M. Night Shyamalan movie. So if you haven't seen them all, go check them out right now. We will wait for you to come
Yeah.
back.
Pause. Okay, welcome back. Thank you.
It's been about 24 hours
If
since
you've
you've been here.
binged.
So welcome
Yeah, so
back.
the
But
Sixth Sense, crazy. Bruce Willis was dead the whole time. Who knew?
right. I mean, it sort of after the fact became sort of like a classic, Reddit or Tumblr like
Movie
fan
twist.
theory for
It's
any TV show that, hey,
right.
what if like this character was actually dead the whole time? And so it kind of
Yeah,
became a cliche after the fact more so than it was beforehand.
absolutely.
But it was also
Um,
a trope that certainly has existed. Dead the whole time is, for sure a trope on TV tropes under some name.
yeah.
On you know, I don't think there's anything super original about it, but what was good was just that it wasn't part of the marketing. It was something
Mm-hmm.
that was usually restricted to like short stories and TV shows rather
Mm-hmm.
than film. and this sort of introduced that idea to the public. I think that's the significance of it.
Right. And I think, you know, one of the things that at least I really enjoy about The Sixth Sense, is the fact that it stands on its own if it was going to just be a regular, like, supernatural paranormal movie, actually about like a psychologist, like helping a kid come to terms with seeing ghosts or something. Like, it works on that level. And then the twist that Bruce Willis is dead the whole time only, you know, sort of accentuates the drama and accentuates the tension of the film. And I don't think it necessarily like takes away from it. But
Right.
maybe you feel
It's a
differently.
recontextualization that doesn't ruin any of the drama. Although I could
Right.
see somebody arguing the opposite. I mean, if somebody
Okay.
was really attached to the story of this man whose wife is cheating on him and who has left him, if that was the part of the movie that you most connected to, like, doesn't this kind of ruin it? I don't know.
I would say it doesn't though, because the, you know, he gets his reconciliation at the end. You know, he has his moment of anger where he thinks his wife is drifting away and that she's cheating on him, and then, you know, he realizes, oh shit, I'm dead and you're still like hung up on me. Like, you really loved me. Okay, like, I get it. This is fine. I'll move on so you can move on. You know, like, that's basically
Okay,
what the end of
this
the
is
movie
fine.
is.
I'm dead.
I mean, like, he's not like, this is fine about being
Yeah,
dead,
it's
but
it's
like
almost
he
like
looks
the
to the light
realizing
with
that
a
you're dead
smile.
is a relief rather
Yeah,
than like a shocking, like, oh my god, everything that I know and love is a lie and is gone.
right.
It's a relief. Like, thank God I'm dead.
Right, like, my wife isn't drifting apart because I've hurt her or we're incompatible anymore. She's drifting apart because I literally don't exist. Okay, this makes sense. You know, like,
Right.
I don't know. I think it still works on that level.
Yeah. I mean, like The Sixth Sense, I think if you've watched all of the other Shyamalan movies, it does contain all of the classic Shyamalan things,
Oh yeah.
weird acting, child actors,
I mean, I think
just
Billy Joel Osment does a great job.
he does a great job, but it's always the disturbing child is this like
Mm,
running figure in
yes.
in his oeuvre, and yeah, he
Also,
must love working with children. I don't know exactly what it is, but he then also has the most bizarre dialogue. I don't have any like
yeah.
great examples from this film, but there's definitely like a lot of weird things that a kid would never say, even one who
Yeah.
talks to ghosts.
Yeah.
Um, and then a lot of just odd line reads by Bruce Willis. It's a staple.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really have any particular issue with Bruce Willis's performance or line reads in the film. I think it works for the character and I think it works for, you know, what's happening. He definitely is a little bit verbose, you know, especially with his children characters. Like, he definitely overwrites
Yeah,
everything a little bit, you know. Um, but yeah, I didn't have too much of a problem with this. I would say this is one of his less overwritten films in in his oeuvre.
right. I think so too. Should we move on to Unbreakable? We can always come back if we need
Yeah,
to.
but real quick, do you want to touch on Stuart Little? Didn't watch for this rewatch, but, you know, watched as a child. The twist in this one is that it's Annie. It's just Annie but with a mouse. So that's the twist. Is the
Yep, it's an
parents aren't
adoption
his parents.
narrative. There's some fake parents who try to adopt them.
Yeah.
It's the Annie plot. Yeah, but he just sort of wrote the screenplay on that one,
Yeah.
for money. He probably wrote it like before he even
The
really
Sixth
knew that
Sense
he was
even
going to
came
be a
out.
big name.
All
So
right. Yeah, but
Unbreakable.
Unbreakable.
I mean, this twist, if you haven't seen this one, is that Samuel L. Jackson, who plays Mr. Glass, is a secret villain. But what's interesting to me about this one is that this is a twist that would be right at home in any other superhero movie. That
Mm-hmm.
it's not a particularly Shyamalan-esque twist, except for
Yeah.
that the movie just kind of ends after that, almost like it's unfinished. They just come up with a text crawl that says
Yeah.
been arrested, you know?
Right.
Like
Like he was
the big
charged with 3 crimes of
right. I mean,
terrorism.
typically after the twist that reveals who the villain is, you then have a big climax where
Right.
the superhero fights the villain. As it stands, it's almost like the film cuts off right at the third act mark.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting because, the whole point is that, he can't fight physically and he wasn't interested in committing acts of villainy. Like I think it plays into why Mr. Glass was a villain. I think you're totally right about if we were to transplant Unbreakable into like a modern superhero context, it definitely is like right before the third act and the final confrontation and the climax where, like Mr. Glass would actually have planted a bomb in some other building and now the hero has to reveal himself and blah blah blah. But
Right.
we're getting ahead of ourselves because this is all covered later in this secret trilogy.
Right. Well, that's isn't that like the weird thing about it? It's to sort
Yeah.
of take the what would be the third act of a typical Hollywood film and
Mm-hmm.
then just displace it 10 years into the future
Yeah.
and just, or almost 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Like 17 years in the future.
Yeah.
And then, just sort of make it a totally different movie, that third act, and
Yeah.
introduce a whole other character from a film in between.
Yeah, so let's move to Signs. Let's talk about Signs.
Right. And I think by the time we get to Signs, now we start to recognize some patterns in these
Yeah.
twists.
Yeah.
So, okay, in each of these twists so far, they're accompanied with flashback scenes. So we're seeing something visually being recontextualized. And we're also hearing voiceover, usually a flashback voiceover, some line from earlier that's now being reintroduced so that we can understand what is going on.
Right.
So every twist has like a pause where you get to rethink and reconsider the whole movie that you watched up to this point and think, does that make sense? Does that
Mm-hmm.
work? Is that what happened? So in The
Mm-hmm.
Sixth Sense, it's the scenes of, okay, flashing back and seeing what it looked like if Bruce Willis wasn't really there and that, oh, yeah, no one was actually looking at him in those scenes.
Right.
And then you're hearing him saying, they don't know, the ghosts don't know that they're not dead.
Right.
The ghosts don't know that they're dead. The ghosts can't see any other ghosts, just
They
like
only
listing all
see
the
what they
rules.
want to see.
Exactly. So it's just listing all the rules again so you can get it. And then
Mm-hmm.
Unbreakable, same thing. You have a monologue from Mr. Glass, over shots of him doing the things,
Mm-hmm.
blowing up trains and,
Buildings and
scrolling over
planes.
his news clippings of destroying buildings and whatnot. And you have all
Mm-hmm.
of that going on while you're hearing a voiceover of, yes, this is how I knew my role as the villain because we're opposites, you and I, but we're also the same, and
Mm-hmm.
etc. So we're getting all of that recontextualization. And then Signs, it's not exactly a twist in the same sense as the previous two,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's more
Absolutely not.
just a big, it's the puzzle box sort of coming
Yeah.
together.
It's more
Um,
J.J. Abrams-esque than,
Yeah, but not even. It's more just
yeah.
like, have you ever seen like any of the Pure Flix movies? Any of those Christian movies about how everything happens for a reason
It's
and
more like
whatnot.
that. Yeah.
It's more like that. If you've ever seen God's Not Dead, which by the way, highly recommend.
It's
Um,
a very fun e-watch.
yeah, it's got Kevin Sorbo. His wife dies, and then by the end of the movie, you find out that like or no, his mom died of cancer or something. I
I
can't
don't
remember. But
remember.
anyway, he gets hit by a car specifically so that he can, regain his faith in God, which he had lost, and he
Yeah.
started, preaching in schools about how God's
Being an
dead.
atheist, yeah.
So this is
Um,
kind of like that.
it's a little bit like that. For those of you who don't know, the twist in Signs, Signs is about a bunch of aliens who land in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, based on a
And
lot of like the classic myths of the Greys, skinny, tall, gray,
crop
naked
circles,
aliens.
what have you.
Flying
Uh,
around in flying
yeah,
saucers, doing crop circles,
right.
poisoning
But you
people,
know,
all
they're
these things.
allergic to water. That's the twist.
Well,
The
no,
water
see,
makes
that's the
them go
thing, right? Is I
ouchie.
don't think that is the twist.
Okay, what's the twist?
I think the twist is that God is real.
What?
Because it's not, this movie was written by M. Night Shyamalan without the, the push that every film of his has to be a big twist that changes the whole movie. It was critics and people who saw his film that
Mm-hmm.
ascribed the twist is that they're weak to water. Because that's not really a twist because they announce it earlier in the film.
Do they? But
Yeah,
like they do
there's
that
a
with a
whole
lot of
scene
his
where M. Night
twists.
Shyamalan, as the veterinarian who killed Mel Gibson's wife, uh,
Uh-huh.
he's like, "I'm gonna go down to the lake." They're saying that they don't like water very much. That's
Okay.
what they're saying on the news, and everything that they've said on the news up to that point has also been true. That
Mm-hmm.
they appear to be appearing in large numbers. They're doing ground forces. They left behind their wounded. All these things that they say on the TV all turn out to be true. The
Mm-hmm.
point is just that it's something that people aren't readily willing to believe just because they hear it. So
Right.
yeah, I guess it is kind of surprising when the water falls on them and it literally burns through the alien's flesh like acid. But I don't think that's the twist. I think the twist is that it turns out that Mel Gibson's wife dying was all part of God's plan so that she could give them her last words, which were the secret to defeating them.
That's the twist.
You don't think so? You think that's wrong?
I don't know. I mean, it's been a minute since I've seen Signs, so I'm not as fresh on it. But
Well, I guess here's my evidence is that if we're
yeah,
comparing it to the first two twists, in those two, you have flashbacks with a voiceover. And in this
right.
one, we don't have flashbacks of, at least I don't think we do. I don't think we have flashbacks of M. Night Shyamalan's character saying that they stay away from lakes.
Uh-huh.
What we do have is a flashback to Mel Gibson's wife dying and explaining this stuff and saying swing away and see and let the boy have fun and let the girl will always be protected by the boy, all the advice that she gave right
Mm,
before she died, which Mel Gibson said that he thought it was just gibberish because her last neurons were firing before she
all
died.
right.
But now we're getting the twist, which is that it was all done for a reason, that there is no such thing as coincidence.
Yeah. This is interesting because I think at this point with Signs, we've established this strange pattern. And this isn't necessarily about twists, but I think is a very prevalent theme in Shyamalan's work that I do want to address
Yeah.
while we're talking about him. Um, is his sort of fascination, preoccupation, and like total misrepresentation of people with mental illness, and then also just like neurology in general. Like he just falls into every single like bad cliche writing trope around this stuff that exists. And like
Right. So in,
it's
in
just
Sixth Sense, we
everywhere.
have the mentally disturbed,
Child and murderer.
yeah, who kills Bruce Willis just because he's sick in the head. And
Right. Well,
then,
he's sick in the head, but also he probably saw ghosts or whatever. So, like, oh, the sick people are powerful, but like
hmm,
in a weird, creepy way, not like they deserve to
right.
be treated as
And
humans.
and in Unbreakable, he's got a physical disability, which also turns
Right.
him evil. And
Right. And Bruce Willis has like, a physical extra ability, which, automatically superhero. Doesn't mean anything else, just superhero. um then in Signs we have, oh, when my wife was dying her neurons are firing randomly, but no, it's a message from God is real, like
right, I don't think
the
this is on the
mental,
same level as those other
it's
two,
not
but
on
I
the
can
same
see why it's a
level,
pet peeve.
but
Yeah.
I'm just saying it just feels like he uses mental illness and neurology in general as sort of this like
Key to
catch-all.
unlocking the supernatural.
Right. And it's sort of a pet peeve of mine in general as a trope. and I was sort of surprised to realize when I, watching all of his films kind of in succession, that like this is almost as much as the twist, this is like a trope that he is constantly invoking. And we'll see that as we continue into The Village too, which we stand The Village. If you want to hear us stand The Village for like an entire podcast, you can go check out the It's Not That Terrible podcast, available wherever podcasts are found. There are some great guys, Morgan and Zach, and we talked about The Village in depth. But for the sake of our podcast, what's the twist of The Village, David?
The twist in The Village is that the monsters are fictitious, that they are the elders of this village, or just using them to keep people from learning the true secret of the village, which is that it is not an 19th century little hamlet in colonial America. It's modern day America. It's 2004, and they're in the middle of Pennsylvania, in like Philadelphia area.
Yeah, that's the other thing. All of Shyamalan's movies take place within train distance of Philadelphia, if not Philadelphia themselves.
Go Birds!
I really want Gritty to be a part of Old. That's my hope for Old, is that Gritty makes an appearance.
That'd be good. That'd be pretty good.
But so that's the twist of The Village, that the monsters are fake, they're just the elders, and that they're not in the 18th, 19th century, they're in like they're just in the woods LARPing.
And now basically. I think that when we start to get, this is one of the first films that people experience some exhaustion with the trope of the Shyamalan twist. And I think that's partly because there's a lot more exposition involved in this particular twist. It's a lot more verbal. Now it's using the same film techniques. He's still doing a flashback to scenes that we've seen earlier, but now recontextualized. He does a voiceover thing of every person who lost someone tragically in a murder. Each of the villagers has experienced some kind of trauma as a result of crime.
Right.
And then that's why they set up the village. And so they've been hinting at it throughout the whole film that that was the reason that they founded the village. But now we realize, they founded that village because modernity is evil to them.
Yeah. And also capitalism. I did like that.
Yeah, but at the same time, it was a place that was founded by a super rich capitalist.
No, 100%.
And it was designed to move all the white people away from all the non-white people.
I know. It's definitely low-key a little bit racist.
Well, they are, but I don't know. I think that it's okay, because I think this is like, it makes it sort of a primordial early draft of like Get Out or something, because I mean, it's purposeful, right? I mean, M. Night Shyamalan is not white. He wanted to tell a story about how spooky white people are, and we are the spookiest.
And the crazy spooky shit they'll do to protect each other and themselves, quote unquote.
Right. Just like how scary it is to have racist white people cults running around, which are everywhere. It's I like The Village. I think it's a good movie. It definitely falls into what you were just saying about M. Night Shyamalan and mental illness.
Yeah, there's a sort of the main like physical antagonist of the film who sort of puts a lot of the plot in motion is a mentally disabled man who is, supposed to be the innocent lamb, but then commits a murder and then, tries to kill a lady later.
Animals and stealing their skins and
and it's just
all
like
kinds of bad stuff.
So like people with autism are just like murderers. Chill. Like, there's supposed to be this idyllic village where they're away from all of this terribleness, but the person who brings the terribleness to them is, a mentally disabled person. And it's, I get what it's trying to go for as far as like thematics, but like the actual implications of it are cringy, to say the least.
Right. And, I think that all of the explanation that they use for the twist in this movie is necessary. I think it's important to get the idea across. And then a lot of people I've seen have also criticized the film because after the twist is revealed that the monsters aren't real, they still try and play up the idea that the monster is still scary for this blind this blind character played by Bryce
Right.
Dallas Howard.
Which I think works for some people and doesn't work for others. For me,
Right.
I think it still works.
Absolutely works for me. I mean, the whole point is that there are irrational fears, that there are
Yeah.
things, even if you tell us that there's nothing to be afraid of, we're still going to be afraid of it, including a person with a mental disability
Yeah.
running around in a spooky costume who you can't tell if they're a real monster or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're alone in the
And
woods
blind.
and blind. And then the secondary twist that it's in modern day, it recontextualizes the film, but it
Yeah.
doesn't shatter any of the drama.
No, I think yeah, we had this conversation with the It's Not That Terrible crew where, you know, for one of them, it sort of felt like the movie was kind of boring knowing the twist. But for me, I think the drama absolutely holds up.
But I mean, I find all of M. Night Shyamalan's movies to be a little slow, a little methodical in their
Yeah.
pacing. I don't think that, you know, The Village is any worse for it. I think that sometimes methodical pacing can be useful for building suspense or
Yeah.
for just letting moments land, you know?
Right. That's what I was gonna say. It's there's a great sense of dramatic irony watching this movie knowing the twist. And I don't feel
Yeah.
like that dramatic irony ruins it. I feel like, at least for me, it enhances it. And it makes the drama, because you can put yourself in these characters' shoes, I think, but still knowing the reality of the situation, it almost makes everything like a little bit more Shakespearean in how kind of like
I feel like it
tragic
just
it
makes
is.
it I feel like it just makes it ridiculous. It
I
becomes a
mean,
total farce, and I like it. I like
I
that it's totally farcical. That every time they're talking about
yeah.
burying the bad color, you're thinking like,
Yeah.
wow, these people are such rubes. They're
But
so goofy.
I love it because, you
Me
know,
too.
like as you know, does burying the bad color hurt anybody? No, like fuck it, like bury the bad color, live your best life.
Bury the
But maybe
bads.
next time you decide to create like a 18th century cult, bring some medicine. That's like my one takeaway for The
Have a
Village.
backlog, you know, have one person designated as the go to the village
Right,
guy,
and you
go to
can
the towns.
you can mystic it up as like, you know,
They're a
the
wizard, so that's why
right.
they can avoid the monsters.
Right,
Like you
or
can
you
say
do it like
anything and they'll believe it.
or you do it like The Giver, where there's like one guy who knows the truth, and then like everyone else is brainwashed. You know, like it's
Yeah.
fine. Just plan your cult better next time.
Yeah,
Um,
so I just want to say, yeah, totally disagree with anybody who thinks that the village is the twist that's like, now this is too cliche. Because the Signs twist, super cliche. It's a
yeah,
pure flicks twist. Unbreakable, it's the twist in the third act of every superhero movie. All the other superhero movies just decide to have another climax after
act,
that.
yeah,
The Sixth Sense, I mean, that's definitely a Rod Serling Twilight Zone kind of twist that a
right. But
character
it's
was
so
dead the whole
fun.
time.
But it's so
Yeah, it's
fun.
totally fun. There's nothing wrong with being
Yeah,
a little bit derivative.
yeah,
It's just, yeah, the whole point of praising Shyamalan on how clever his twists was never true, but
right,
they were never a problem.
right.
They were always something that enhanced the story.
Absolutely. So Lady in the Water. This one I did not watch. There
Right.
was not enough time.
So
However,
this one again, I don't think it really has a twist, but because it's in this era where every film of his had a twist,
mhm,
there's a critical incentive to force a twist in there. And there's a little bit of a sort of cheekiness to Shyamalan addressing his critics, and by
uh-huh.
cheekiness, I mean blatant in your face saying I hate my critics, because there's a character played by Bob Balaban. Let me introduce the plot real quick for those of
Yeah.
you who don't know, because I'm sure most people have not seen this movie or remember what it's about. There's a
It's
guy
mermaids,
played by
right?
Paul Giamatti. He mermaids. There's a guy played by Paul Giamatti who is the sort of landlord at these apartments that are all around this pool, and everybody around the apartments is like a really interesting character, almost like they're in a story. And then this mermaid, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, pops out of the pool, and she's naked and hot. And Paul Giamatti is this stuttering, nebbishy guy whose wife was killed by a murderer. Um,
A lot
brings
of fucking people being killed by murderers in
a lot of dead
Shyamalan flicks.
wives.
Not just dead wives, just so much
But there's
murder.
also a lot of dead wives.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and then he brings this mysterious fae of a woman into his apartment, and she says her name is Story, and she's a narf, which is like a type of nymph from a Korean folk tale. And so he
But
goes
being
to the
played by
only
Bryce Dallas Howard, so
right.
it's
Well,
fine. Don't worry about
she
it.
comes from Planet Blue, and the story just happened to be an Eastern fairy tale. It was based on something that M. Night Shyamalan was making up and telling to his kids, basically. And so he wanted to turn that into a film. And so the whole thing was, it's about stories, it's a meta narrative. And so
all of his films are about stories, though. That is one thing I have noticed. All of his films are pretty meta. Maybe not
this
Signs.
one especially, though, because, and I'll get to the Bob Balaban of it all. he basically he has to find all of the different tenants of the apartments who fill the different roles of this story, which are like the guardian, the soothsayer.
This sounds very children's storybook.
The guild, yeah. And they point that out too. Like, oh, you think this is a kids movie? Well, we're gonna kill a character on screen. Don't just you wait. It's man, it's like
fuck your kids, man.
It's real dumb. But I mean, I don't want to be the critic guy, because there's this character played by Bob Balaban who is a film critic who his whole role is to set off the twist in the movie. Because what he does is they're trying to find who would be these different roles, and one of the roles is like, the seer or something. There's a different name for it, I can't remember, but it would be somebody who's really good at seeing signs. And so Bob Balaban is like, well, maybe in the first act of a movie where you had to find a seer, maybe you would see someone who really knows puzzles. And so in the first act of the movie, we had this character who was really good at crossword puzzles. And then his son keeps like reading these like children's cereal boxes and being like, man, this color really speaks to me. And so we go in and we're like, oh, because Bob Balaban said that it's puzzles, we got to go with the crossword guy. But then when it comes to the climax, it turns out he's not getting any visions. So he must not be the seer. It must be someone else. Wait a minute. My son sees the beauty in cereal boxes. Maybe he's the seer. I guess we shouldn't have trusted that film critic. What kind of person would think that they could see into another man's soul? Oh, must be a dirty, rotten film critic who's always overanalyzing and simplifying and making everything according to his little tropes that he sees in all these other movies, and making assumptions about what writing should and shouldn't be.
David, do we have to quit now? Do we have to stop?
Well, this is what I'm saying is like, yeah, well, we're not trying to psychoanalyze M. Night Shyamalan or anything. All we're doing is identifying patterns in his writing, and saying whether we found them
compelling or not,
whether they're compelling, whether they support the themes of the films. And for the first several films, at least, I think that's definitely true. I think Lady in the Water, like, it kind of holds together, but you have to be really on board for this very meta story about M. Night Shyamalan writing stories, in which M. Night Shyamalan plays an author who writes a book about politics, which is so influential that he's assassinated over it in the future after the end of the film.
What?
He's not assassinated on screen. He receives a prediction from this mermaid fairy creature that after the movie's over, he will be murdered for his controversial political book called The Cookbook. And then that it will also inspire a young child who will eventually become president.
I mean, hopefully it's like a good book. Question
well, we
mark.
don't ever see what it is, but I guess we're supposed to assume that it's progressive and dangerous, and conservatives come to kill him over it.
I guess, though you could really read it either way. Like, there's no.
Yes, you could. Yeah.
It doesn't seem like there's any really grounding ideology behind this.
I'm not going to try and psychoanalyze like what M. Night Shyamalan was trying to get across in Lady in the Water. That's not my role as a critic.
Yeah.
But as a film theorist, as a media scholar, I would like to say that I think that this film is not a film with a big twist in it. It's a film with a story, and stories
Mm-hmm.
happen to have twists. The twist is a
That's
twist
fair.
in the third act, which is included in every screenwriting book from here to Timbuktu. You know,
Right.
like these are really common tropes. The twist in the third act, it ups the tension, it moves us into the climax.
Right.
That's its role.
This
So
this
that's a
isn't.
long spiel to just say this isn't really a Shyamalan twist where it ends
Mm-hmm.
the film and recontextualizes everything before it. It's just
Right.
another story beat.
Yeah. Um, let's talk about The Happening.
Please start us off. I have no clue how to start.
I mean, where do you start with The Happening? This movie is truly incredible. I had never watched it before, but I have watched lots of like video essays about it and like various reviews, and I knew that it wasn't good going into it. I did not realize what I was stepping into, the glory, the beauty, the delight that is The Happening. This is a
Yeah, I
comedy
still
film.
like it.
It's
I
a
don't think
comedy
there's
film.
well, I don't know that it's a straight up comedy, but there are definitely comedic elements to it.
It's like a comedy film. It's got like generally as much violence as like your Jackass movie in it. Like there's more murder for sure, but it's all off screen.
That's not
It's
true at all. What do you
what?
mean? There's a guy
Like
who gets run over by a lawnmower, and we see the blood shooting out of the thing.
oh,
There's a
yeah,
guy who jabs like a needle in her neck, and
that's true.
there's people who like slit their wrists on screen.
All
It's
right,
very
all right, all right. I
triggering. I
take
mean, this is
okay.
a
Yeah,
triggering movie, I'm sure,
that's
for some.
that's that's true. Um,
A lot of dead bodies
that's
just
true.
hanging, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
people who hang themselves.
yeah.
Um,
The suicide part of The Happening is definitely a lot, but everything else about it is hilarious,
right. Well, I
including
mean, it's like a romantic comedy with Zoe Deschanel and Mark Wahlberg.
yeah, it's
Uh,
insane. It doesn't make any sense. Both of them are horrible, but like it's not like the script gives them anything great to work with,
Wait, what's wrong with Mark Wahlberg? He's just your cool teacher who's
Oh,
cool.
he's the worst. I can't stand him. He's just like, yo, science is cool, but then says everything he says about science is like about belief. It's about God, like none of it is actually about
Well, this
science.
is the thing
Where he's
is
like,
all a
the
lot of
act of
Shyamalan's
nature.
movies have this figure of the skeptic who over the course of the movie is brought into faith.
No,
And
no,
so
no, no,
that's in
no. But like Mark Wahlberg is not the skeptic. From the beginning, he is the believer, where he's like, some things are just an act of nature and we'll never understand them.
no, but he
Whoa, man.
addresses everything through this lens of science and reason and we have to
But
well,
it's
okay,
like
but here's the
trying
thing,
to
like
apply science and reason to the Bible. Like at a certain point, you are just taking a leap of faith, but Mark Wahlberg can't like conceptualize that.
right. Well, I guess it's more in the dialogue, which is the fun part. That you'll have Mark Wahlberg. He's confronted with this impossible thing that people are inexplicably killing themselves, but not everyone's doing it. So it
Mm-hmm.
must be something in the air, but we don't know exactly where it's coming from. It seems like a terrorist attack, but we don't see any terrorists. And it's happening in
Yeah.
weird places like in Central Park and in the middle
Another
of the
park?
woods. Yeah, so that's
Like
exactly
that's
what
the
he'll
thing.
do is he'll just go like Central Park, that doesn't make scientific sense. And then it'll be a zoom up close up on his face and he'll be like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm thinking like a scientist. I'm thinking like a scientist. We have to split it into two groups, conduct an experiment, control variables. He's just like talking like no one has
Right.
ever talked.
Yeah. No one in this movie speaks like a normal human at all or age appropriately. Like there are children who are talking like their 30-year-old buddies to like Mark Wahlberg and be like, man, you gotta like move on your lady, bro. And it's like, what the fuck is
Yeah,
happening?
John
Who are you
Leguizamo is a
people?
treasure in this film. Love him.
Oh my God. It's just, and it's insane. And the whole like, oh, there's a hole in the roof of the Jeep. So like everything is just so over dramatic. And like you can't I couldn't take a minute of it seriously. And the whole twist that it's like the fucking trees is not a twist. It's just like part of the movie.
Right. Well, that's the thing, right? Is by this point, I think that had become aware, as evidenced by Lady in the Water. And again, I'm not trying to
Mm-hmm.
psychoanalyze him here, but I think by
Yeah,
Lady in the Water, he's certainly aware of his critics, hence the
for
critic
sure.
character.
Yeah.
And then by this movie, he's sort of trying to subvert things. So in the trailer for this film, like in all the other trailers, it's sort of unclear what's happening. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's the happening. People are dying. but there's no real explanation given. And so it's sort of set up like, okay, the point of the movie is it's a mystery about what the happening is.
But
That's
it's
not what
not a
it's about.
mystery.
That's not what
But
it's
they
about.
play
It's
it
not about
up
that
like it's
mystery.
a mystery for so long, and then it's not a mystery, and it's just
Well, yeah, well,
so frustrating.
so it's a red herring. So he's there's a character who says, I'm a plant scientist, and I think that it might be the plants. Plants sometimes can communicate with each other, and they sometimes release chemicals designed to
And
drive away
they
specific pests.
insects, yeah.
The bees, whatever. Oh, also, yeah, the thing about the
Bees.
bees are disappearing, which was also done in like Doctor Who
Where
the same year,
where are
and
they
it was
going,
this
man?
it was this big trope for a while back then. I don't know if you guys remember, but yeah, the bees were disappearing, and people were just like, "This is like a science fiction thing. This is science fiction bleeding into the real world."
And it's like, no, it's just the horrible reality that we live in now.
Right.
But it's fine. I mean, hey, we're in a pandemic now, so thanks for demonetizing us, YouTube. um, yeah, so I don't know. The Happening is great. You should definitely watch it. I'm sure there are happening like drinking games or whatever that you can play. Highly recommend.
Right. And I think that
Um,
the happening really, at the end of the day, I think it's trying to be Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, or sort of it's a
oh, with
throwback to
plants.
that. And this is also, I think the happening is also very Twilight Zone-ish, you know.
Yeah, but like it's one of the bad Twilight Zone episodes, you
I
know?
disagree. I really like weird stuff like this, the unexplained, the where it doesn't need to be some like very literal
But
thing. It can
I
be
just feel
that
like
there's
the movie,
discrepancies and people disagree
sure,
about what happened.
I just feel like the movie is too defensive about the fact that it's trying to be like, oh, it's just a fact of nature that we'll never understand. Because so many people have tried to pick apart his movies in the past, like that became part of the fun of a Shyamalan movie
Right.
was
I don't think
finding
that's
out the
why it is
twist.
that way though. I think
I don't
it's
know.
that
I
way
think
because the birds doesn't have an explanation. The birds is just a force of nature.
right, but like no one in it is just like, oh, it was a force of nature. Like they're just like, shit, that's crazy that all
No,
happened. They don't even
people talk
bother.
about stuff in the birds. People are like really confused about what's happening in the
Well,
birds.
I mean, yeah, but they're not like, I don't know, are they
They're not
really? It's been a
fixated on it.
while. Yeah, they're not fixated on it. And like this one, everyone is fixated on what's happening. And like I get
I think
why,
if you
because it's a much
remade the birds today and didn't make it
larger
into
scale.
Birdemic, which is a totally different film that is also fun and you should watch. If
Mwah,
you didn't make it
classic.
into Birdemic, you would probably make it into something like The Happening. I mean, consider that this movie is coming out like right at the same time as An Inconvenient Truth, as The Day After Tomorrow,
An
and
Inconvenient Truth had been
it's
out for a minute. This is 2008.
yeah, it was like 4 years after, but movies take a long time to make.
I mean, yeah, but
I'm just
like
saying,
I
it
don't
was
know.
around the time where we were starting to have this newfound sense of impending doom
About the
around
environment,
climate
yes,
change.
for sure.
And the idea of human beings as being a threat to nature and nature fighting back was in the zeitgeist. I think
Mm,
I think that the twist being that it's so simple can be a little disappointing, but it's meant to be kind of an inconvenient truth for the narrative.
mm-hmm.
It's meant to be like, if only it were something more complicated, more distinct, more specific, we could fight back against it. But there's
Right,
nothing that we can do to fight climate change when it's literally like sending tidal waves to kill us.
right.
We can only fight it beforehand.
What do you think about sort of the like conclusion to The Happening where, they're like, it's just gonna get really bad and then it'll stop and we'll be fine again.
No, but that's the thing is it's like this is a warning for the big one to come, that we're not
Mm,
even watching the real happening. We're watching like the happening before it goes global. And
okay.
that's the really like the dark ending, the
Is
kind of
that the twist?
Hitchcockian rods. It's a very Twilight Zoney kind of ending. Like I can
Uh-huh.
see this being like a Rod Serling movie like Planet of the Apes, where it ends on this
Mm.
very pessimistic like, oh, you damn dirty apes, you blew it up. I know
You
I'm messing up
fucking
that line.
humans, you ruined it.
Right, but you know what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
we're pushing forward into a new era of doom, and there's still
Right.
deniers on the news
Hmm.
saying, no, I don't think it was the plants. Well, then why did it only happen in the Northeast? So there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the happening. It's great. Watch it. Maybe we'll like it for different reasons, but I guarantee you'll find it's so entertaining. You know, if what you want is an entertaining movie, check out The Happening. That's my rec. All right, what are we going to talk about next? Because there's
Let's
technically The
do
Last
Devil next. We're
Airbender.
going to skip Last Airbender because we
It
talked about
doesn't
that.
have a twist.
The Devil is very much a similar movie to this Signs, except for with
Okay.
less aliens and more religion, if you could even
Mm-hmm.
believe that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, there's these killings, and somebody in the very first act says, "I think it might be the devil," and we're meant to be like, "No, it's going to be something else besides that." But no, it definitely is the devil,
It's just the
the
devil.
literal Christian devil. And we see all these things playing out. We have the skeptic character who's this cop who is like, yeah, my wife and child were killed by a hit and run driver. You know, where have we seen that before?
Yeah.
And it was in that day he left a note that said, "I'm so sorry." And that's how I knew. He left a note. Oh, he's sorry? Well, that's how I knew that there's evil in this world because humans are evil. And we don't need the devil to do evil to each other. And so he's trying to solve it like a cop, like who's doing the murders on this devil elevator.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the end, you find out, yeah, it was the devil. The devil was the old lady who pretended to be dead for the whole time.
Oh my God.
In order to trick people so that she could keep doing the killings and they would all suspect each other of being the devil.
Oh my God.
But then at the end, you really find out that the last guy left alive, as the devil is coming over to him and saying, "You're going to hell, you person, you bad person," you find out that he was the one. He was the drunk driver who did the hit and run on the cop's wife and child.
Oh shit! Twist!
But he's sorry.
He's sorry.
But now
though.
he's really sorry. And instead of running, because last time he ran, it was a hit and run. Mm-hmm. This time he calls the cop on the walkie-talkie and says, "I did it. I did the hit and run. I'm confessing." And then the devil says, "Oh, damn, you bested me. I'm out of here. I really wanted your soul, goddammit."
Wait, do you know what movie also has this twist?
What?
Sinbad. The DreamWorks movie where she's like, "You won't go back for your friend," and he's like, "Want to bet?" and then does it, and she's like, "Darn, you bested me, Sinbad." It's the exact same twist.
Right. Well, I mean, but I think this is like so straightforwardly in line with Shyamalan's like oeuvre. This is his style all the way, and the twist is definitely in line with the Signs twist, because it's not a twist of everything that you saw in the movie was a lie, like The Village, or Sixth Sense. It's a twist of everything was a plan, everything was put together. The whole movie was a big puzzle box, and everything makes sense, and everything had a reason for being. So it's very much a clever screenwriter flexing on how clever he is, which can be a little off-putting. But at the end of the day, it's the kind of thing that you would expect from a typical Hollywood screenwriter anyway. It is kind of a JJ thing. I think there's a lot of mirror images between what we're talking about here and what we talked about with our Mystery Boxes episode, if you want to check that out.
For sure. So I think, skipping After Earth, again, not really a twist in that one necessarily.
Right. Just sort of his attempt to write a no-nonsense blockbuster that failed miserably critically.
Starring Will and Jaden Smith. It's great. I've never seen it. Who cares? The Visit. I had never seen this. I didn't know the twist. I loved this. I mean, I think The Visit is great. I don't know what the general consensus is about it, but
what time does the twist sort of get revealed, and is it revealed gradually at all?
So there are sort of moments where they kind of, like, if you know the twist and you're watching, you're like, they're literally just telling you. But if you don't know the twist, you're like, I know something is fucking weird and something's gonna, like, I know there's going to be a twist, but I have no idea what it's going to be. The twist in The Visit comes in, I think there's like 22 minutes left in the film, and I think it's like a 2-hour film, so you know
Right.
we're most of the way through, but
So
it's
we have
definitely,
another sort of twist in the third act that brings us into the climax kind of thing.
yeah, so you know I would say it's definitely more traditional film twist versus, you know, the distinctly Shyamalan twist where,
Stylistic Shyamalan
yeah,
twist. Yeah.
right, where it's like exactly at the end of the movie, but it really does, it's shocking, and it really will turn you. Like this is your second warning. I don't want to spoil the twist in The Visit for you. I really don't. So please pause here. We'll wait. Great. Thank you for watching The Visit. Holy shit. These kids go to stay with their mother's parents, with their grandparents who they've never met. And the mom doesn't go with them to drop them off. She just puts them on the train. And an old couple picks them up at the train station. They're like, these are our grandparents. Twist, they're not. They're not the grandparents. Oh my God.
They
It's very
escaped from the
terrifying.
insane asylum, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which is
So like,
another instance of problematic
yeah,
mental illness tropes.
wildly problematic mental illness tropes, especially along the lines of, you know, there something supernatural to their mental illness, you know, or
Yeah, I
are they
mean, there's
just like
points where
mentally
there's
ill?
definitely some witch vibes, as in
Yeah.
they literally try and like bake someone in an oven.
Well, yeah, they just like have her crawl into an oven to like clean it, but then they like close her in there and she's like, Grandma, let me out, like please. And like she just leaves her in there for like a little bit too long. So it's just it's terrifying. I think for me the part of this twist that is the scariest is, you know, whether or not these people needed to be mentally ill or not. um they just like, the fact that this could happen, you know, that you could
Right.
send your kids to meet your estranged parents, and then like a random old couple picks them up and like kidnaps your children, like
Yeah, I
that
mean, it
shit could
reflects a
just happen.
societal anxiety, which all good horror should. In
Right.
this case, the anxiety is about the disconnection between Generation Z, or whatever, Generation Alpha, whatever, and their grandparents' generation, the Boomer
Mm-hmm.
generation. There's a disconnect.
Right.
You know, there's no real familial ties anymore. Grandparents are living in the homes of their children much less often now
Mm-hmm.
than they were in decades past.
Mm-hmm.
So a cultural anxiety reflected in horror, very very consistent with what we come
Yeah.
to expect.
The bad part about this movie is that the last like 5 minutes are entirely superfluous and like should just not have been a part of it, and like kind of ruin the whole thing a little bit. But
What happens?
well, so it just ends, so it ends on this very overly saccharine note, at least for me, overly saccharine note, on forgiveness, because
Mm.
it's told point of view. So this came out in 2015, so we're a little bit after the shoot, what's the like found footage horror films that I can't think of at
Paranormal
this point? Yeah,
Activity,
it's
a
like
lot of those.
Paranormal Activity. So it's,
Cloverfield.
yeah, so it's the daughter is like this 15-year-old. Oh my God, the most, people complain about John Green characters in like having unbelievable dialogue. This is truly unbelievable 15-year-old and like 13-year-old dialogue from children. Just like nothing here is what a child would say at all, ever. um the kids, I think the kids do a great job with what they're given, they're just not given a lot. um so she's filming a documentary about going to meet her grandparents, and then her goal is to try to get her grandparents to forgive her mom, so that they can have a relationship and her mom can move forward in her life after their dad left them, abandoned them. So it's a little convoluted, but you know, it ends up being about how the mom is like sobbing into her daughter at the end of the movie, and she's like, don't hold on to anger, like you have to let it go before crazy old people murder your parents
Right.
and you don't have a chance to reconcile
So
with
this
them.
is again, it's a commentary on that social anxiety. It's basically
Yeah,
blaming the younger generation for not forgiving the older generation for why generations are growing apart.
I don't even think it's necessarily blaming like the youth for not having enough forgiveness. It's like very much just like we as a world need to be more forgiving. And like it ends with her showing clips of like her and her brother as children with their dad. And she had said earlier in the film that I refuse to use any footage of my father because that would mean I forgive him. And so we go, oh, she's forgiven him. He's in the film. And we're given a hint that that's going to happen earlier in the film because when she says that, he's actually on the screen behind her playing. So we kind of know how it will end. There's a hint. So yeah, the twist in this one is great, and then the other twist at the very end is that it's a Hallmark movie, and I don't like that twist.
Right.
So
But
that
it's all
brings
very
us
Shyamalan. It's he hasn't deviated too much
very
from his
Shyamalan.
basic formula. The places where he does deviate seem to be the ones that do more poorly financially. After
Mm-hmm.
Earth, Last Airbender, but everything that we've
Yeah,
seen did decently, except for like The Happening. Did not do
yeah,
super well. But
or
I
Lady in
mean,
the Water.
yeah, but whatever, right? Like it's the
Yeah.
marketing is always super vague, and then the
Mm-hmm.
actual twist comes somewhere in the movie. It shocks people out of their seats. They blog about it, whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
then the rest of the movie kind of stands on its own. His directing is weird. His dialogue is completely bizarre, but that's what you show up for. So
That's what you
yeah,
show up for. I mean, all right. So now this, I guess not the main event, but this is the only sort of succession of films that
there's only
he has
sequels. Yeah,
directed. Yeah. Is Unbreakable. And then in 2017, he released the movie Split. And the twist in this one is that it's a sequel to Unbreakable, and no one knew that. And
right.
this one you don't find out again until the very end. So we're truly like returning to form with the Shyamalan twist of you find out in the last like minute of the movie and like that's it.
And this is again a very like Tumblr fan theory kind of twist, right? That all movies
Mm,
of a certain, of a certain company or a certain production or a certain director or a certain writer are all existing in the same universe
yeah.
somehow. Sherlock meets Doctor Who, or
Super
um,
Hulak.
or Super Hulak, or something as simple as like or like the Pixar theory where they unify
Right.
all the
Where
Pixar
it's
movies and put them in order.
yeah. So weird. I don't know what's going on with the Pixar stuff. Um, but yeah, so I mean, do we want to talk about because that is just the twist of it, right? Like nothing else
Well,
in
I
it
mean,
is
you could argue
necessarily
that
the
there are other
twist.
twists in the movie. The idea that like the main character's trauma is the secret to finding the heart of the beast, because the
Yeah.
beast also came about due to trauma, and the like
Ugh.
that's kind of a twist that revealing the scars of abuse is the secret to defeating the monster. It's a sort of Beauty and the Beast story with a
It's
literal
very Beauty and the
beast.
Beast. Yeah. Um, so this is another one that's just firmly in the M. Night Shyamalan does not understand mental illness camp because it's just
Right. Or is
like
willfully trying to turn them into demons and superheroes on
right
purpose.
for his own gain. And just kind of doesn't care about,
Right.
the
Because the
actual people
split
who are
is
affected by
split
these.
personality disorder, which is not the proper
It's
name for it
yeah.
anymore. It's dissociative identity disorder, or DID,
Hmm.
which, people have, and it does not give them the power to climb walls or lift
No,
cars.
no.
Uh, it does not change. I mean, it does change their brain chemistry for
Hmm.
sure. I think there are things where it could release certain hormones that wouldn't be released by other personalities,
Hmm.
other identities. But I mean, it does not give you superpowers.
No. Or give you carte
Uh,
blanche to kidnap a bunch of teenagers and feast on their flesh, which is
right.
mostly what this one is about. Uh, it's really, most of it is just a straight up horror film.
Right.
With and like I also have a lot of issues with the like the trauma elements of this film, and you
Yeah.
know, like the rape and abuse of a child as a motivating factor. And you know, like I understand the point that it's trying to make, I just don't know that it
Right.
necessarily is successful in that point, or why those specific traits needed
Right.
to be
But
a part
again,
of
this is another like puzzle box. Like everything comes back together in the end,
it.
kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like everything that was bad happened for a reason because there's a unity to it all. There's no coincidence. There's reasons why everything happens, even the bad things. And so this is this is very much in Shyamalan's sort of worldview. A lot of people would strongly disagree with the worldview that trauma can be justified in any way by having it
Yeah.
rescue somebody from being eaten by a spooky monster at the
Right.
end.
Or that trauma is justified because it gives you superpowers. You know, like this is very like
Right.
Sansa Stark being like, I'm glad I was raped because now I'm stronger, lol, at the end of Game of Thrones, which is like very much not how most survivors talk about their experience, you know?
Right.
Like it's highly problematic in a lot of ways. And I think it's a very male screenwriter issue specifically, and especially with Shyamalan, it's an issue that he's also doing it with mental illness as well.
Right. Yeah. Consider that his go-to trauma for men is their wife dying.
Yes, for
You
sure.
know, I mean,
Or their girlfriend is distant from them.
well, yeah, but there are multiple dead wives. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
I know
And
there's a
then,
lot of
yeah.
dead wives, but like if they're not dead, they're growing apart. Oh.
Right. Should we finish up with Glass?
Yeah. So I feel like I have the opposite opinion of most people, because I feel like, at least critically, people tended to like Split more than they liked Glass. I think Glass is way better than Split. It's way more
I
interesting,
liked
personally.
Glass.
Glass is great.
Yeah, it's fun. It's very cheap, low budget Shyamalan. If some people are thinking like After Earth had a huge budget and it was a flop, Glass had a tiny budget and it's great. Therefore, Shyamalan can only work within limitations. I don't know if that's the read. Maybe the read is that, he's working with actors that he knows.
Right.
He's working with an idea that he's been successful with in the past. He can tweak it. He
Right.
can have fun with it. That's
Basically an
probably more to
idea
do
that
with
he's
its
been
success.
working on for like over 10 years, you know, like almost
Well,
like,
not nonstop, certainly.
no, but like, I mean, sitting with an idea for that long, I think you have more space on it. You know, like there's a very common saying within writing communities, and I'm sure this is true within screenwriting as well, where you work on a draft and then you put it aside for a while and then you come back to it, you know, like, and you
Right.
have fresher eyes and you can see the criticisms a little bit more clearly and rework things. And, you know, with these two sequels, Unbreakable came out in 2000, Split came out 17 years later, and Glass 2 years after that. So, you know, like
Right.
clearly these things had been sitting with him for a minute, you know?
Right. So the setup here, of course, being that the characters from Unbreakable and the super powered character from Split are in a mental hospital because they are saying that all of the things that they believe that they've seen that are supernatural or superhuman were only in their minds, their delusions of grandeur. But
Yeah.
you find out throughout the course of the film that actually all the events of Unbreakable did happen, the events of Split did happen, and there are other superpowered individuals in the world, and that's what Mr. Glass wants to show everybody, right?
Yeah.
Is there a
And the
clear, definitive twist moment?
I think the twist is supposed to be at the end when we find out about like the clover, the black clover, whatever it is,
Yeah,
the
it's kind
secret.
of sequel bait again, isn't it?
I think a little bit, but I mean the whole thing could be technically sequel bait, because you know Mr. Glass says at the end, he's like, "This was never my story. It's an origin story. You know, like
Right.
this isn't the like ultimate limited or series or whatever. It's not that
Right. Well, we said that
climax."
this whole movie is the third act of Unbreakable that they didn't ever
Right.
write.
Right.
And then this movie also is only the first act of an entirely different, trilogy or whatever that's starting.
The
So it's always the putting off of the real superhero story in favor of we'd like to just see the bubblings of it.
the MNSU, the M Night Shyamalan universe.
I like it. Yeah. But yeah, I
Um,
guess you could say that the twist is the twist that he was recording the fight between Unbreakable
yeah.
Kimmy Schmidt uh, and Mr. Splits, Mr. Do the Splits. He was recording
uh,
that fight on
yeah.
security cameras. So it's just sort of a normal, bad guy actually won when you think he lost twist.
It's basically the twist from Spider-Man, like
Yeah,
the most
yeah,
recent Spider-Man, where Jake Gyllenhaal just recorded everything and then was like, "Oh, the Spider-Man is this guy." It's like, but it's Samuel L. Jackson being like, "Superheroes are real, Marvel's real."
yeah. So I think the key to all of this is to say that none of the M. Night Shyamalan twists are twists that were never used in other
No,
films. They're
absolutely not.
all they're all standard tropes, but they're used in a different way because of the way that his films are marketed, such
Hmm.
that the twists are always part of the marketing,
Yeah,
and he also uses them to flex on his cleverness as a screenwriter
yeah.
in ways that can come across to certain viewers as unsatisfying. What we're talking about really, I think, is tropes of narrative satisfaction. Same thing
Hmm.
with the mystery boxes, where setting up a mystery box without necessarily envisioning the opening of the mystery box can lead to narrative dissatisfaction. Here we have, if you balance the plot of a film on a twist that can go one way or the other, that no matter which way it goes, if it's shocking the audience, that can lead them to narrative dissatisfaction or
Hmm.
extreme narrative, you know, I don't know, what would you call it? Like elation, just
Yeah,
shocked at how amazing the twist is.
catharsis. It's a form
Okay,
of
yeah,
catharsis, which like most storytelling is aiming to induce catharsis in the listener or viewer or reader or what have you. Like we engage with fiction to experience that sort of feeling of release and relief and excitement. And
right,
like twists are an essential part of that. As you said, they're an essential part of horror, they're an essential part of suspense, they're an essential part of action, of superheroes, of sci-fi. Like these twists exist for a reason. And I think
right.
M. Night Shyamalan, with his early work, really liked that. In the same way that I think Christopher Nolan also kind of likes twists in a
He
in a
loves
similar
twists, but they're
way.
very different, I think.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
He'll
Though
end with something ambiguous that makes you think, or if it is a twist, it's a twist that you know. No, I guess the twist in at the end of what was that film about magicians?
oh, The Prestige.
The Prestige. I mean,
Yeah.
that's very similar to what M Night
That
Shyamalan's
feels very
twists are like.
Shyamalan. Also, Memento, where it's like you get to the end and everything that you know about the film is like entirely different.
Right,
Like there's definitely similarities there. So I think it's just because Christopher Nolan leaned into a different aspect of that sort of twist storytelling, whereas Shyamalan was like, "Oh, people are talking about the twists. I guess I got to do twists now." And
right,
then felt maybe pigeonholed by that and felt the need to respond to those critics and yada yada yada, and
right.
we end up with The Happening and Lady in the
Which
Water
which
and
which I
whatnot.
guess it makes sense that he would have such a beef with critics if this is something that so deeply affected him as a
Yeah.
screenwriter. Not that I'm psychoanalyzing him. To be clear, I am not.
David, you can't know another man's soul.
I am not Bob Balaban. Let me repeat. I am not Bob Balaban.
That's gonna be the standard you hold yourself to. Am I Bob Balabanning this?
Right. But I think M. Night Shyamalan as a creator, as an auteur, because he does write and direct and
Hmm.
produce so much of his stuff,
A
you
ton.
know, worth worth revisiting, but
Yeah.
not worth, uh valorizing or, saying like he's
No.
perfect.
I don't think there's anyone out there saying he's perfect.
No.
And I think he started out with a very strong with The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable. People really like Signs. The Village is where a lot of people, we said hit fatigue. And then we definitely have our little dip with, Lady in the Water, The
Yeah,
Happening, and
I
then
think
we
that's
do
the typical
what have
consensus.
you.
Personally, I have no investment in Unbreakable. It doesn't do anything for me. Sixth Sense was good, not great.
I really like
Signs,
The
I think,
Sixth
is
Sense.
hilarious in its dialogue, and so I absolutely adore the dialogue in Signs. The Village, I think, is a bop.
It's a
Lady in the
bop.
Water is so confusing and like just bizarre because it's just like out of a kid's imagination. Again, there is a soothsaying kid who reads the cereal boxes.
Fuck yeah.
Like, how can you not enjoy that? The Happening, I think, is funny, but also kind of works.
it,
That's
I
me.
it's just so insane. I can't with it. Avatar is
Devil is fun.
obviously trash. we
Yeah, Last Airbender is trash, but Devil is fun. Uh, After Earth, just weird. The Visit, very fun.
I love it. I think if that's my one takeaway from this is like watch The Visit because man, it's fun. Show someone the visit. Like I watched it with someone who knew the twist and they had so much fun like watching me experience the film. So yeah.
Right.
And also
Yeah,
Split
I
and
guess
Glass
that'll work now.
were enjoyable,
Yeah.
I like them. Split less so, Glass more so. Yeah. He has a new movie coming out called Old.
Old. Who knows when
Assu-
it's actually coming out, though? I mean, given
yeah.
the way that
It's
theaters are going right now.
yeah. Is it still currently filming? It says that it's filming on Wikipedia, but I feel like
Yeah, but
it's
I don't
got it
know if they're
wrapped.
in. I don't know if they've taken a break or whatever. I'm not
Right.
in that
Um,
world.
Presumably also set in Philadelphia, though we'll find out.
Well, we'll see you, and I guess maybe we'll touch on if you want us to touch on M Night Shyamalan dialogue, we always can. But we didn't include many of his weirdest quotes, but we'd be happy to retouch on Shyamalan if that's
Yeah.
something that you guys are interested in, or if you want to
Um,
deep dive on any of the movies we skipped, After
Hit us
Earth,
up. Let us
let us
know.
know.
Tweet
You
at
can
us
tweet
at
at us at
Talking
Talking
Tropes.
Tropes, or you can check us out. We're on YouTube and we're on SoundCloud and wherever you can listen to podcasts, basically.
Yeah, give us a rating on, Apple's podcasts, on Stitcher, wherever you listen to your audio learning entertainment material. I've lost the thread.
You've lost the thread. And next time
Twist.
we're and next time we're talking about we're doing another Standing Stanley Tucci. We're going to be talking
Yeah.
about the Tucci's early television career.
It's a wild one. It's great. There's some good stuff. Tune in.
All right. Well, we'll see you later.
Bye bye.